We are fortunate today to have Reverend Karen Linsley in the house. I'm so excited that we finally have brought this about. Reverend Karen is an author, she's a podcaster, and a Science of Mind minister. She was licensed in 2008 as a practitioner and as a minister in 2014. She offers all kinds of workshops, classes, and retreats. Again, she's an author of multiple books, I believe. She lives in northern Nevada with two horses, two cats, and a dog. And she's currently serving as the interim minister for Rio Grande Center for Spiritual Living in New Mexico. And I know they are just beyond blessed to have you there, Reverend Karen. We are delighted that you're here this morning. Off we go. Thank you.
Off we go. Well, thank you very much for having me here. And I want to begin today by saying thank you, Deborah, for the introduction and your treatment, for reminding us that the universe always conspires for our good. And I don't know about you guys, but I always need reminders like that. And um, I just do. So thank you very much. So today I'm doing a talk for you, and it's a little bit of a departure from what I normally do. I'm trying to inject some humor into life here. So I'm hoping that you will get some humor today from my talk. I'm calling it Lessons from the Wheelbarrow. And Barbara, earlier in the morning, this morning, she said you guys live in a rural area, so you might be able to understand the lessons we could learn from a wheelbarrow. And and I'm cracking up. I'm laughing at myself here. And I have to share with you that I live, eat, and breathe science of mind. It isn't just something that I do on Sundays. It is a part of my life. And so it doesn't matter what I do in life. I'm always thinking in terms of our teachings and what is taught to us, our spiritual principles, our spiritual practices. And so I had a little adventure with a wheelbarrow, and I wanted to tell you that story and relate kind of how the lessons it provided for me taught me or reminded me of some very good, wonderful science of mind principles. And the first lesson is the one that Deborah mentioned in her treatment, that the universe always conspires for our good. So, through a series of events and coincidences stemming back years, I also live in a rural community. I live on a little 2.5 acre, I call it a ranchette, out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. It takes a half an hour to get to the nearest grocery store or the nearest gas station. So we're out here pretty far. And I can now look back on all of the events that have occurred in my life and know that it was all ultimately for our highest good. And sometimes when we're in those situations and we have those events happening to us, we can't always feel that it is ultimately for our highest good. And so during those times when we can't feel that, we need to just have faith that it is ultimately for our highest good. And I have learned that over and over and over again, that it is all ultimately for my highest good. Ernest Holmes tells us this. He says, the universe conspires for our highest good. He said, all nature conspires to produce and manifest the freedom of the individual, that it may unloose its own energy. And so as I move on through this story, I realize that there isn't a single event that happened to me, nor a single choice that happened through me, that wasn't part of a giant conspiracy for my highest good, to get me to the here and now, where most of the time I am able to live in the consciousness of as me. And notice how I kind of cleverly weaved the 3 of the 4 kingdoms of consciousness in there. I'm quite proud of myself for that one. Now, if you aren't familiar with the kingdoms of consciousness, they're the brainchild of Michael Beckwith, who's the founder of Agape International Spiritual Center in Southern California. And he teaches new thought, just like we do. And I love these four kingdoms of consciousness because I can recognize that, and we move back and forth through these kingdoms of consciousness. We don't sit in one kingdom all the time, but we can know with self-awareness, we can know that life happens to me, life happens by me, life happens through me, or life happens as me. And you guys know there's a lot of stuff involved in that. I could do a whole retreat on just the four kingdoms of consciousness. So forgive me for glossing over them, but I have a talk to give to you guys this morning. I want to tell you the rest of the story of the wheelbarrow. So in Science of Mind, we say that God is all good all the time. And again, we may not realize this, we may not know it, right? And that's what we use practitioners and ministers for, by the way, to remind us that God is all good all the time. So I'm out here and I'm in that space of knowing that God is all good all the time. And I'm being a minister. In spite of pandemic and shelter in place, I'm doing everything on Zoom. I'm doing talks via Zoom. I'm writing, I'm podcasting, I'm doing all this ministerial stuff. I'm serving as interim minister. And in my spare time, I'm playing with my horses and doing my gardening. And if you know anything about horses and gardening, you know that you need at least one wheelbarrow. Got to have it. Otherwise, you think trying to get things done just doesn't work very well. So I bought my very first wheelbarrow last year. Now, I'm 66 years old. I bought my very first wheelbarrow last year. This is another lesson. We're never too old to begin to do anything in life, to begin something new. And when we do, we have choices. Who knew they made so many wheelbarrows? I walked into Tractor Supply, which is now my favorite store, by the way, and looked at these wheelbarrows and said, wow, how do I choose how to have a wheelbarrow? And here's another lesson, another Science of Mind lesson. You know, every choice we make is based on our beliefs. And it's real good for us to know what our beliefs are. I don't know if any of you have ever had a class that Home Office put out last year or the year before called Spiritual Principles and Practices. Well, in that class, I love that class because in that class, it talks about all the spiritual practices that we get to do around here in order to live and embody this teaching called Science of Mind, not just do it and not just talk about it on Sundays. And one of those practices is self-awareness. And that's probably my most, other than oneness, other than being at one with God, that's probably my most favorite spiritual practice. So when we make a choice, and it doesn't matter whether it's choosing a wheelbarrow or anything else, we do so based on our beliefs. So it's really important to know what our beliefs are. So I have a belief that if it's cheap, it's probably not well made. When I make my choices, I choose not on price. Price is third or fourth down the list. I actually choose based on form and function. And some gut level intuitive thing that says, "Ooh, I like that because it's purple," or whatever. Too bad they don't make purple wheelbarrows yet. I'm working on it. But so that's my belief. I can and I will be frugal if needed, but form and function come first in my choice. But I don't know anything about wheelbarrows. So choosing based on function kind of is like a moot point at this stage of the game because I don't know what makes a good wheelbarrow. So then we have trust and faith. And we have to have trust and faith in our own ability to make good choices. And isn't that what part of what this thing called Science of Mind is all about? We have self-awareness, we trust our decisions, we have faith in the God within us. We know this stuff. We know that the universe always conspires for our good. So I proceeded to move forward based on trust and faith that I could make a good choice regarding the wheelbarrow. So I bought the wheelbarrow. I was very happy with my selection. I brought it home. I began using it, and life was good. And I'm merrily doing all kinds of things with this wheelbarrow. And then the wheelbarrow got a flat tire. Now, who knew that wheelbarrows get flat tires? Actually, I did know that, but I had conveniently forgotten. And that reminded me not to go into spiritual bypass about stuff, not to ignore things, especially not those little nudges that say, little pokes. Take a look at this, Karen. There's something going on here. Wheelbarrow gets a flat tire, and I called a neighbor for help. And here's the next lesson. We get to ask for help in this life. We get to ask for help. Now, some of us don't like to ask for help. I am woman, hear me roar. I am independent. I don't need any help. Thank you very much. I'm here to share with you today that asking for help is actually very empowering. Very empowering. So I call up the neighbor. I say, my wheelbarrow's got a flat tire. And what I asked for was for him to show me how to fix it. He did not do that. He came over, he took the wheel off the wheelbarrow, he went away, he came back an hour later, and the tire was fixed. And he put it back on for me. And I'm very grateful for his help, but I haven't learned a thing here. I don't know how to remove the tire from the wheelbarrow. I don't know how to fix a flat tire. I don't know how to do any of that. And that reminded me that there's good help and help that might not be so helpful. And it reminded me of something they told me in ministerial school when they said, Karen, as ministers, we don't really help people. We serve people. And there's a huge difference. And if you're a volunteer in your center, you're not helping, you're serving. And if you approach it from that perspective, it makes all the difference in the world. And then there's that expression, I'm sure you've heard this expression, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So I had been given a fish. I didn't know a thing, but I was back in business with the wheelbarrow and I let it slide for the moment. And life went on and I continued to use it. And by now I've brought my horses home with me. And so I'm using this wheelbarrow every single day because what comes with horses? Horse manure. You got to clean it every day. So I'm out there every single day and I'm merrily and happily cleaning my horse manure every day. And one day I'm cleaning my horse manure and I've got a wheelbarrow full and I proceed to go out to the pile where I dump it. And I realize I've got another flat. I'm like, really? Really? I have another flat? Oh my, what's up with this? These tires, these aren't very good tires here. And so I call the neighbor again. Same neighbor. Sometimes it takes a while for my lessons to sink in, but this time I asked him, what's the name of those tires that don't get flat? And he said they're called solid tires. And he offered to come over and take care of it for me. And I said, no, thank you. I said, let me do this. Plus he couldn't get at it for 2 or 3 days. And I shudder to think of what would happen if I waited 2 or 3 days to clean out the paddock. So I'm going to do this myself. So I know I need to get solid tires. So I realize I have no clue how to remove the tire from the wheelbarrow because nobody's taught me that. I've never learned that. But we have this thing called YouTube. We have YouTube. You can find anything on YouTube. Anything you might want to do, you can find it on YouTube. So I go on YouTube, I figure out how to remove said tire from said wheelbarrow and realized that what I really needed to do was get the new tires first before I removed the old tire because that was just the order of things, the way things are done. And, you know, I'm reminded of Ernest Holmes saying there's no past, no present, and no future. And how I translate that in my mind, that science of mind teaching, is do the next indicated thing right now. Do what's in front of you to do. I have to do this all the time so I don't get overwhelmed with things. Next indicated right step, and then the next, and then the next. So I took a photo of my tires. I took a photo of the wheelbarrow. I took a photo of the label on the wheelbarrow, and off I went to Tractor Supply, which is a 45-minute journey. Because remember, I live out in the back 40 in rural America. So I think I've got everything covered. Size of tire, pictures of wheelbarrow, type of wheelbarrow, everything. Off I go to Tractor Supply, and I walk in there. And now in Tractor Supply, I typically go to the equine section, which is to the left. I know that section pretty well. I don't know the tire section at all. The wheelbarrows are out in front of the store. So I'm wandering around looking for the tires, and I'm feeling okay about everything. And you know, I've done my spiritual practices. I've got prayer partners. I've got, you know, all kinds of people to assist me on this journey called life. And I ask for help again. I ask, where do they keep the tires? Because I couldn't find them. And this young lady who helped me showed me this aisle, and it's an entire aisle full of tires. So I show her my pit. I know, a lot of tires, which should have told me something right there. So I show her my photo of my tire, and we peer at it, and we get the size of the tire, and she says, okay, you need this size. And we have to move and shove tires around in this aisle for a few minutes before we finally found the tires that we needed for my wheelbarrow, same size, only they were solid, not the kind you have to put air in. And I bought my tires, and I was very happy with my choice. And I come home, and I removed the tire from the old tire from the wheelbarrow, and went to put the new tire on, and it doesn't fit the axle. The axle is just like a hair too big for the opening in the middle of the tire. By now, I'm feeling not so spiritually fit anymore, and there's no way I'm going to drive 45 minutes again back to Tractor Supply that day, because I was done with my task for the day. And I paused and went back in the house and did other things. I probably ate and took a nap, because I was, you know, this thing is frustrating now. And that's another spiritual lesson. When we get frustrated with life, sometimes we just got to take a step back and let it go. And I call it pausing when agitated. And to me, this is a huge part of self-care. It's like when something's not working right, we just got to take a step back. And how many times have I've had this experience? A lot. Maybe you've had it too. When something, you're trying to solve a problem and it's just not working, and the solutions are not coming to you. And, you know, remember that quote by Einstein, and said, we cannot solve a problem with the same kind of thinking that created it. I'm thinking about all this stuff, and so I'm taking a break from the tire. And I do something for the rest of the day. And the next day, I decide I'm going to go back to Tractor Supply and see if I can't find my new tire that will fit the axle. So I take the old tire off the wheelbarrow, and I actually bring the tire to Tractor Supply. And I promised myself I'm going to be nice here, because I'm thinking about the law of attraction. And I know if I stomp into that store all angry and frustrated, that's when I'm going to get back. And I don't want that. So I try to be nice. I walk in the store, I'm being nice. I'm being nice. I'm being nice. They do not have any tires to fit that axle on the wheelbarrow. No tires. So I bought a backup wheelbarrow. Got to have a wheelbarrow. I bought another wheelbarrow. And this brings me to another life lesson. Get backups. We back up our computer data, I hope. We have I hope you have a backup dog. I don't have a backup dog currently. I'm working on it. Get a backup cat, get a backup horse. Get your backups in place. And this is good, solid, hardcore practicality. And it's science of mind teaching. How many times have we heard everybody say, treat and move your feet? Have faith, but get a backup. If you heard, and there's lots of expressions in different teachings. Trust Allah, but tie up your camel. You can sit in a closet and pray for food all you want, but God isn't going to shove a hot dog through the keyhole. We have to get up and get out and take action and get a job and go and buy the hot dog. And then we have to prepare it. There's action to take. And this tells me that I am in partnership with God. And it tells me that there's certain things that are my job to do and certain things that are God's job to do. And we get to personally decide what's God's job and what's my job, because that's the beauty and the freedom of this teaching. So I've got my backup wheelbarrow, and I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm merrily using my wheelbarrow every day now. I'm going to go out this afternoon and go merrily use my wheelbarrow again. And I just wanted to repeat all of the lessons I learned from a simple thing called a flat tire on a wheelbarrow. And we if we're aware and we're mindful and we live and breathe and move this teaching called Science of Mind, these lessons are available for us everywhere. And I am so incredibly grateful for them. So here's what I learned from the wheelbarrow. The universe always conspires for our good. We're never too old to learn new things. And I love this quote by Ernest Holmes. You are as young as your faith, as old as your doubt, as young as your confidence, as old as your fear, as young as your hope, and as old as your despair. And so that reminds me to have faith, replace any doubt with faith, have confidence, replace my fear with my confidence, have hope. Here's another thing I learned from the wheelbarrow. We are at choice as to which kingdom of consciousness we live in. All we need to do is be aware of it. If I'm living in that first kingdom of victim consciousness, I need to change that. But in order to change it, I have to be aware of it. I love living in the fourth kingdom, where I know without a doubt that I am one with God and God is one with me. And therefore, I also know that I have the power to do all good things in this world, because God does too. And God is a part of me and I am a part of God. Our choices and our actions and our thoughts and our feelings are based on our beliefs. And that's another thing I learned from this little wheelbarrow lesson here. It's extremely advantageous to know what our beliefs are. How many of you have gone to visit a practitioner and asked for a treatment, and instead of going right into the treatment, the first thing they do is they jump into some sort of exercise or series of questions designed with the sole aim in mind of getting you to discover what your belief behind this particular issue is, so that you can change the belief. Because that's our part in things. We get to look at our beliefs and change them. And we get to have faith, and we get to develop and nurture that faith. Another lesson from the wheelbarrow, we get to ask for help. And we get to be specific in how we ask for help, so that we're not just given a fish, but we're taught to fish. And we get to remember that when we help people, We don't just give them a fish, but we teach them to fish. There's a real fine balance there. And again, I have found it really helpful to know that it is in service. I serve people. I don't help them. I serve them. How can I serve you is a question that I have begun to ask people because it's really helpful. It's really helpful. And so that's another lesson from the wheelbarrow. Now, here's something I learned from the wheelbarrow. I don't know if this is a science of mind teaching or not. I don't know. This lesson, it's keep it simple. Now, if you read Ernest Holmes at all, he doesn't always keep it really simple. It's our job to kind of just boil it down and keep it simple for ourselves so that we can gain some sort of comprehension from this very powerful teaching. So we keep it simple. We do good self-care. We take care of ourselves. We take care of ourselves by knowing our oneness with God and acknowledging it and acting from that place. We take care of ourselves by asking for help when we need it. And last but not least, we have faith, and then we take action. So we move through this life with faith all the time, but we also take action. We treat and we move our feet. So now I have the new wheelbarrow. Now the original wheelbarrow with the tires that still aren't functioning right. My neighbor and I have decided together that we simply do not take no for an answer, ever. Now I've been living life on that foundation for a long time. I do not take no for an answer because, see, here's the deal. I'm one with God. God is one with me. If I have an idea or an urge or a desire, it's God-given. That means there's a yes there. That means if I've got a desire, there is a way to accomplish it. My job is to take action and maybe start thinking a little differently so that I can accomplish it. So we're researching ways to replace the axle on the wheelbarrow so that we can get the solid tires on the wheelbarrow. So there you have it. There's always a way to go about doing things. And so in conclusion, I'm going to conclude with a prayer here. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to tell you my little story about the wheelbarrow and all of the science of mind lessons that I learned from this, and express my gratitude for being here. And so I do move into that place of oneness. I do move into that place where I remember and I remind myself and I know once again that God is indeed everywhere present. And I also remind myself and I remember in this time of prayer that God is always good all the time. And so in this connection with God, I speak my word knowing that today I have faith. I have the faith that moves mountains. Today I have knowingness. I know who and what I am, and I know how science of mind works in my life. I have gratitude today. And I have that absolute joy and wonder and delight at all of life because I know that the universe is always conspiring for my good. And so my word today is for faith and for gratitude and for knowing my good. And it is with that great gratitude that I release those words into that law, knowing it is already done. And I anchor with those wonderful words. And so it is.
So it
And
is.
thank you very much.